Today I want to share with you how to make Instant Pot El-Rooterai cultured dairy, what many call super yogurt. Hi sweet friends, I'm Mary and welcome to Mary's Nest, where I teach traditional cooking skills for making nutrient-dense foods like bone broth, ferment, sourdough, and more. So if you enjoy learning how to be a modern pioneer in the kitchen, consider subscribing to my channel and don't forget to click on the little notification bell below. That'll let you know every time I upload a new video. Well, chances are, if you want to learn how to make El-Rooterai yogurt, it's because you either saw a video by Dr. William Davis or you read his book, Super Gut. This is a wonderful book all about how to improve your gut health, because as scientists and doctors often tell us, a healthy gut means generally an overall healthy person. And the subtitle of this book really says it all. A 4-week plan to reprogram your microbiome, restore health, and lose weight. I just want to take a second to talk about El-Rooterai and what exactly it is. However, if you're already familiar with it and you just want to get to making it in the Instant Pot, be sure to check the timestamps in the description below so that you can jump ahead. And also in the description underneath this video, I'll have a link to the blog post that'll correspond with this video, where I'll have lots of details as well as the printable recipe. Now, in a previous video, I showed you how to make El-Rooterai cultured dairy in a yogurt maker, in little individual yogurt cups. But some of you left me comments asking if I could show you how to do it in an Instant Pot. So that's what we're going to focus on today. But if you want to see how to make it in a little yogurt maker, that video will be linked in the description below. So what exactly is El-Rooterai, and why has it become so popular for making cultured dairy? And why are we using that term, cultured dairy? Well, El-Rooterai is simply a good bacteria, and it can colonize our gut and improve our microbiome. And what I mean by microbiome is the environment that we have in our gut, in our digestive system. And we always want to be improving it with as much good bacteria as we can. Probiotics, which means good bacteria. And what's interesting about El-Rooterai is that we used to have a lot more. The people who came before us, our ancestors, used to have a lot more El-Rooterai in their digestive system, but modern people have a lot less. Why is that? There are a lot of different theories why, and some of them are linked to the fact of the diet that we eat, the standard American diet, or SAD. Yes, the acronym is SAD. And the fact that we eat a lot of processed foods and a lot of pre-prepared foods and a lot of chemicals and artificial ingredients don't feed our good bacteria, our probiotics, with what they need to stay healthy and grow and flourish. Now, certainly in a traditional foods kitchen, we're doing our best to eat wholesome real foods and limit processed foods. But anything that we can do in terms of a cultured dairy that's really rich in good probiotics, the better. And the only reason that we'll often use the term cultured dairy instead of yogurt is because, at least here in the United States, the U.S. Department of Agriculture controls what the term yogurt means. And in order for a cultured dairy to be called yogurt, it has to have certain good bacteria, certain probiotics that it has been cultured with. And El-Rooterai is not one of those required cultures. So technically, it's just called cultured dairy, but many of us call it super yogurt. And we call it super yogurt because it's the best yogurt that you've ever had. It is so thick and so rich and loaded with El-Rooterai, good bacteria, because of the way we culture it. And flooding our guts with the good bacteria of El-Rooterai, we increase the hormone in our bodies known as oxytocin. And oxytocin is often nicknamed like the cuddle hormone or the love hormone. it tends to make people loving and kind. And so sometimes people say, gee, the fact that modern people have a lot less L-reuteri, is that maybe why people have become a little harsh with each other today? I don't know about that. However, the fact that we can increase the oxytocin in our gut has a lot of good effects on our body overall. However, if you are pregnant, Dr. Davis recommends that you not eat this type of super yogurt for the fact that oxytocin is something that could cause you to go ahead and give birth, and maybe not at the time that you're supposed to. But he does have other yogurts in his book, or cultured dairies in his book, that he does recommend for women who are pregnant. So I just want to get that out there so that if you are pregnant, you're not making this and you're not consuming this. Now, I just want to take a second to read something to you from Dr. Davis' book, Super Gut. And if you've got the book, this is on page 25. It's down on the bottom. And the heading of the paragraph is very cute because it's titled L-reuteri, the love bug. As you've often heard good bacteria referred to as a bug, or bugs like when we make the ginger bug to make homemade ginger ale and things like that. Things that are fermented or cultured and are rich in good bacteria are often referred to as bugs. So L-reuteri, the love bug. The bacterial species Lactobacillus reuteri is a star in the world of intestinal microbes, one that yields spectacular effects for its human host. Up until the mid-20th century, most people in the Western world enjoyed the benefits of this bacterial species dwelling in their GI tracts, which they had acquired from their mothers as infants by passage through the birth canal and breastfeeding. So this is what's very interesting, as I mentioned, that generations previous to us were more likely to have more of it than we do. And then he goes on a few paragraphs later, but modern life has eradicated this species from 96% of people in the Western world. I was shocked when I read that. This book is so filled, it's filled with so much wonderful information, I can't say enough about it. Today, only 4%, fewer than 1 in 20 people, continue to enjoy the presence of this marvelous species. Isn't that amazing? Among the benefits, and this I think you will find very interesting, among the many benefits of L-reuteri is its unique capacity to trigger the release of the hormone oxytocin from the human brain, which has been demonstrated through an elegant series of experiments conducted at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT. Oxytocin is the hormone of empathy and connectedness. It is the hormone that surges when you are in love and feel closely connected to another person, or pet your dog. That's cute. So maybe when you pet your dog, which as a dog person I can totally relate, you're releasing oxytocin. Oxytocin helps you see the other side of an argument, cultivates sympathy for the plight of other people, and reduces social anxiety. So in the book, he goes on to talk about the fact that society has really changed in recent years. And why might that be? And might it be because we have less L-reuteri, and also because of that fact, less oxytocin? And so maybe, he says it's a complex subject, of course, but maybe might that be one of the reasons that our society seems to be turning harsher. So it's an interesting theory, and it's something very interesting to read about and explore. But certainly, I think we can all benefit by making L-reuteri yogurt and consuming it on a regular basis. And in the book, Dr. Davis goes on to talk about all of the wonderful things that L-reuteri can help with when it's prolific in your gut. And one of them is that it can help with weight loss. But the other thing that it can help with, and I think maybe most of us women, maybe some men too will be interested in this, is that it can actually help reduce wrinkles and improve our skin texture. Okay, count me in. Alrighty, so now let's go over the equipment that we're going to need to make the El Ruderai yogurt in the Instant Pot and the ingredients that we're going to need. Now, although we're making a quart of this super yogurt or this El Ruderai cultured dairy, I recommend breaking it up into 2 quart-sized jars as opposed to trying to get it all into 1 quart-sized jar. And the reason is that you do want to leave a little bit of room for some expansion as the milk, or in this case half and half, which we'll talk about in a minute, goes through the culturing process. And as far as your Instant Pot goes, it needs to be able to be one that you can program the temperature. Just having the yogurt option is not sufficient. You need to have an Instant Pot that has the yogurt option, but that also allows you to adjust the temperature. And the reason is we need to be able to adjust the temperature to 100 degrees Fahrenheit because El Ruderai needs to be cultured at 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And you also need to make sure that your Instant Pot can be set to 36 hours, that it can maintain that 100 degree Fahrenheit temperature for a set 36 hours. And the reason you need to be able to maintain that 100 degrees Fahrenheit temperature for 36 hours is because when Dr. Davis and his team cultured dairy with the El Ruderai bacteria, they found that it sort of went along on its way, just culturing nicely, and then at 30 hours, it started to increase significantly, where it peaked at 36 hours. So that now you have a super cultured dairy, a super yogurt. You have a cultured dairy that is very rich in good bacteria, as opposed to the cultured dairy you may buy at the grocery store, whether it's a yogurt or some other cultured dairy product. Most of those are only cultured for about 4 hours. And what Dr. Davis and his team found was that when you just culture dairy for 4 hours, the amount of good bacteria in it is not significant. It's there, but it's just not significant. If you go for those full 36 hours, you get a real hockey stick effect. You know, you're kind of going along like this, then boom. And now you have something that is really good for our gut health. And today we're focused on El Ruderai, but there are a lot of different strains of good bacteria in which you can use to culture dairy, and those different strains have different effects on your health. They help with certain particular conditions, so on and so forth, which Dr. Davis goes into a lot of detail in his book, and I look forward to sharing some of those with you in the future. If you've read the book or if you've seen some of Dr. Davis' videos and you have specific interest in certain types of cultured dairy that he's talked about over and above the El Ruderai, let me know in the comments below, and I am happy to look into looking for that type of bacterial strain and experimenting with making it and sharing that with you. Alrighty, now what I like to do when making the El Ruderai cultured dairy is to use a large measuring cup, but you can certainly use a big bowl as well. Either will work. I just find this very easy, whether I'm making it in the little yogurt cups in the yogurt maker to pour it in, or whether I'm making it in these quart-sized jars and makes it easy to pour in. But certainly a bowl and a ladle will work too. Now, first you're going to need some dairy that you're going to culture. And Dr. Davis recommends using half and half. Can you use milk? Yes, but if you do, you want to make sure that it's whole milk. Anything less than whole milk will make a weaker, watery product. And you're going to need 32 ounces. And the good news is, those of you who have told me that all you can find at your local grocery store are ultra-pasteurized products, you're in luck. Because in order to make El Ruderai cultured dairy and allow the El Ruderai to really be able to proliferate, you need to start with an ultra-pasteurized product, because we basically want to eliminate any competition of any other good bacteria that may compete with the L. reuteri and make it difficult for the L. reuteri to proliferate. Now, what if you have just pasteurized milk? Or what if you have raw milk? Can you still make L. reuteri cultured dairy? Definitely. But what you're going to need to do, and I'll have full instructions all about this in the printable recipe, but basically what you need to do is act in the same way you would if you were making some type of other yogurt with pasteurized milk or raw milk. You'll need to bring both of those, the pasteurized milk or the raw milk, up to 180 degrees Fahrenheit, hold it at that temperature for a while, and you're basically ultra pasteurizing it. So once you've got your ultra pasteurized half and half, you're all set. Now, can you use cream? I didn't mention that, like heavy cream, heavy whipping cream. Yes. However, that may make such a thick product, it might be very unusual, and I'm not 100% sure how palatable it will be. I've read that when some people have made it with heavy whipping cream or heavy cream, or depending where you live, it may be called double cream, have said that it's almost like butter. And so that may be a bit much, but I think the half and half is perfect. It makes a wonderful thick yogurt or cultured dairy, a wonderful end product, like a Greek yogurt, but then some. If it's as though you took a Greek yogurt and strained it even further and got a thicker product that's scrumptious. Now, in addition to the dairy product that you're going to use, you're going to need the L. reuteri. You're going to need the good bacteria to culture the milk with, or the half and half, whichever you're using. And this, I did have to buy this online. Depending on where you live, you may be able to find it at a health food store, or if you have like one of those healthy living sections, health food store sort of sections within your grocery store, they may have it. This is becoming more popular, so keep your eyes open for it. But I'll definitely put links to the different things that I'm going to talk about in the description underneath this video if you're not able to find these things locally. But basically, we're going to need 10 of these tablets. And as you'll see, it's just a little round tablet. These do have a mild aroma. It's pleasant. They're somewhat flavored because people can take these and chew these, but by turning them into a cultured dairy, we're going to make the L. reuteri a lot stronger than just chewing these tablets. So you're going to need 10 of these. And they're relatively easy to find online. There are different brands. The only reason that I used this brand is because this is the brand that Dr. Davis used in all of his studies. So I just wanted to go with the same thing that he used. The only other thing you're going to need is some type of prebiotic. And the prebiotic is going to feed the probiotic. And the reason that we want to add this is because we're going for that long 36-hour culture, we want to make sure that we give this good bacteria, this L. reuteri, plenty of food to eat after it's kind of gobbled up a lot of the milk sugar that's in half and half or in whole milk. Or I guess it gets less and less. You've got the most milk sugar in your milk, a little less in the half and half, and then I don't even know if there's very much milk sugar actually in heavy cream. But as I mentioned earlier, I wouldn't recommend making this with heavy cream. I think it's just going to be a little too thick. But in any event, we want to feed the L. reuteri. And it'll be gobbling up some of, as I said, the milk sugar that's in your half and half. But you're going to need some type of what's known as inulin. And inulin is a prebiotic. It feeds the probiotic. And there are some different options that you have when it comes to choosing prebiotics. I'm just showing 3 here. These are 3 that I've all experimented with and tried. To be honest with you, I don't notice a significant difference. Maybe some may give a little mild sweetness, but it's almost undetectable. But in any event, this is one that's by a company called Cutting Edge Cultures. And this contains organic inulin, organic acacia, and this other word, I'm going to butcher this because you all know, if you've been with me a while, my pronunciation sometimes is really off, but fructooligosaccharides, maybe that's what it is. And this is actually, I want to mention that if you've been seeing the interviews of Dr. Davis, you may have seen the one with Donna Schwenk, who does a lot of videos all about, she has a great podcast all about culturing dairy and making various types of ferments. And this is the prebiotic that she recommended by Cutting Edge Cultures. And this worked, I've used this, it worked just fine. And if you're not familiar with Donna Schwenk, I'll definitely put links to her YouTube channel in the, I'll put it in the pinned comment, so it'll be very easy for you to find. She is just a fascinating woman, and she has 2 terrific books all about the, as she refers to it, the cultured life, and how to make a whole host of cultured foods, and definitely look into that. But she interviewed Dr. Davis, and they talked all about making the L-Reuteri yogurt. And I think that's actually the first video I saw that got me so interested in all of this. Now, the other types of inulin that you can use, the prebiotic, this one is from chicory. It's a root, and you might know it from, if you've seen the granulated bits that people would often use in place of coffee when coffee wasn't always available. Definitely during like the Great Depression here in the United States, during the sort of lean times, people would either just drink chicory or they would cut their coffee with half coffee and half chicory to save money. My mother used to do that. But anyway, so this inulin is from chicory. It's wonderful. Prebiotic, it's good for our health, and it definitely helps feed the L-Reuteri. And then this one is also an inulin powder, and this is from Jerusalem artichokes. And another great option, as I said, I've used them all. They all work great. Today, I'll just go ahead and use the chicory, only because this is one that I have opened. These are new ones that I've been making a lot. I've tested a lot in the Instant Pot and just making it in general. So these aren't opened yet, so I'll go ahead and use this. But any that you have, and I'll put links below. Also, these sometimes, too, you can find at health food stores or sort of your specialty gourmet grocery stores. Now, when it comes to the inulin, the prebiotic, you're going to need 2 tablespoons. And this is how we're going to start. We're going to go ahead and we're going to measure out 2 tablespoons of our prebiotic, of our inulin. Go ahead and put that in your bowl or in your large measuring cup, whatever you're using. Next, we need to count out our 10 L-Reuteri tablets, and we need to crush them into a fine powder. If you have a mortar and pestle and it's clean, you can certainly use that. I'm just going to go ahead and put these into a plastic bag, and then I'm going to use the flat side of a meat pounder to break them up. So I've got my L-Reuteri tablets in my plastic bag, and I'm just going to go ahead and start mashing these up. Alrighty, well, I've got this pulverized now into a good powder, and I'm going to go ahead and add this into my measuring cup. Now, you could probably, I was thinking about when I was doing this, if you have a nice clean spice grinder, that would work too. It'd probably do an excellent job. You just want to make sure that it's nice and clean. And the reason that I'm saying that is, you know, we just want to give the L-Reuteri all the good chance it can of being successful. We don't want to introduce, you know, any bad bacteria. Now, what Dr. Davis recommends is once you get your inulin in there, your prebiotic, and you get your L-Reuteri in there, all crushed up, your probiotic, now you're going to want to just make a little slurry before you go ahead and add in all the rest of the half and half. And the reason that we're doing this is he recommends that this helps to just really avoid any creation of clumps in the final product. And I definitely agree. I think this helps very well. Be very efficient about this job and getting this mixed very well into a smooth slurry. Now initially when you add in your half and half, definitely there's going to be some little clumping of the inulin along with the crushed L-Reuteri tablets, but just keep mixing it up. I love using this little magic whisk. I've shared with you about this in the past. Just gently keep mixing it and allowing both the inulin and the L-Reuteri tablets to be hydrated by some of the half and half, and it'll start to thin out, and before you know it, you won't see any clumps. This usually takes me maybe about a minute to do, to get to the consistency that I like, where I don't see any more clumping. As you whisk it, you're going to see that all of those clumps are going to dissipate. Everything's going to be blended in beautifully. There'll be no more in your whisk. That's just the actual half and half clinging to my whisk. You'll see that there's no more clumps, nothing. It's just beautifully smooth and ready to receive the rest of the half and half. And that's it. The next thing we do is just go ahead and add in all of our half and half. And just give everything a nice whisking to make sure that we get everything well incorporated so that all that dissolved inulin and all the dissolved L-Reuteri tabs are well dispersed throughout the half and half. Now all we have left to do is divide this half and half between these two jars. Now I'm just using plain old quart-sized canning jars. If you have the Weck jars, they're sort of tulip shaped. I've used those also. What's nice about those, they have the glass lids that just kind of rest on top, which keeps everything glass, which is nice. You just want to leave off the metal clamps. All you want to do is put the glass lids on top and then put them right into your Instant Pot. It'll work great. But since these are very easy to find and most people have quart-sized jars, for today's example, we're just going to go ahead and use the quart-sized jars. And as I said, I've got a funnel here, but I think with just the, since I've got this in the measuring cup, I think I can do this neatly. And as I said, I like to divide this up. When I tried making this just in one quart-sized jar, it's really filled, like right to the top. And when I had the culturing going on, because there is, just by the nature of, culturing is a fermentation. And so things can sometimes expand a bit. And so it became a little messy and was kind of over the side. So I just recommend dividing it between two jars. And I just try to be as even-steven as I can. There we go. We'll just put these side by side and I'll get them just the way I want them. Now, what I want to recommend to you is we do want to put the lids on, but we want them to be very loose. That's kind of what I like about those Weck jars, is that they're very easy to work with because you just put those metal lids right on top. But with these plastic lids, and I do recommend using, something that's food safe plastic, like these canning jars, storage lids. I don't necessarily recommend using the actual canning lid and ring. If you do, I would really just put the canning lid on top. I wouldn't even worry about the ring because it's really just a matter of just keeping everything neat and clean. But as you see, I'm just basically putting this on top. I'm not screwing it on at all because, culturing, fermentation, there are gases that can be produced, and if you tighten this, those can't be released. Now, I'm going to remove the rack. You do not need the rack for this application. I have experimented a lot with trying to make L-Reuteri super cultured dairy, super yogurt, whatever we want to call it, in the Instant Pot. This particular Instant Pot also has a sous vide option. Now, Dr. Davis uses an actual sous vide, the thing that looks like a stick in a carton or container in which he puts water, and then he puts the sous vide in there and he puts in his jars. And he apparently has, been very successful with that. For my situation, when I tried doing the sous vide with the Instant Pot and putting it in jars like this, I found that it didn't quite culture correctly. And I wasn't so much worried about the first try, which we'll talk about in a minute, but on the second try using the sous vide, it still wasn't culturing correctly. And so I can't really recommend using the sous vide option based on my own personal experience. If you have made El Ruderai in the Instant Pot using the sous vide option, please let us know in the comments below and explain exactly what you did, because that can really help others. What I have found is that the yogurt option for me works the best. And all I do is simply put my jars down into the Instant Pot, right into the lining. Now, can you just go ahead and pour your mixture right into the Instant Pot, into the liner? You probably can. I have not tried that, because then you're going to have to go through the extra step of kind of scooping it out and decanting it somehow. And the more you fool around with it, the more it's going to affect the texture. I kind of like just having it right in the jar and scooping out what you want, and you're all set. It's also easier to just go ahead and refrigerate when you're done with it, and you don't have to worry about trying to decant it out of your liner. But say you wanted to double this recipe, I don't know if you could 100% double it. I think you could probably fit another quart-sized jar in here, so maybe you could do 1.5 times. But yes, if you wanted to make a lot at one time, then maybe using just the liner would work out for you. However, I have never tried to double this recipe, so I can't share with you exactly how it might come out. But I think that a quart of half and half, 10 El Ruderai tablets, 2 tablespoons of some type of inulin, some type of prebiotic, divided between 2 quart-sized jars, set at 100 degrees Fahrenheit for 36 hours, works very well. Now let's talk about the first batch. We'll go ahead and we'll set our Instant Pot for 100 degrees Fahrenheit for 36 hours, and then I'll come back to you and I'll show you exactly what our first batch is going to look like. I will give you a little heads up, and you already know this if you've seen the El Ruderai video where I made it in the little yogurt maker cups. There will be some separation into what sort of looks like curds and whey. Now that generally only happens on the first batch. On the second batch, which I am going to make with you in this video and show you what it looks like, what the end product looks like, you usually don't have the separation of curds and whey. You usually only have that the first time. Now, let's take a minute to talk about what do you do with your first batch. Don't discard it. Just mix it back up together and refrigerate it, and it'll be fine. Most importantly is to remember to save some of your first batch. Mix up the curds and whey, refrigerate it, enjoy it, but save some of it. Save about a 1/4 cup or so, because we're going to use some of the first batch to culture our second batch. You no longer need to use these tablets. You only need to buy these tablets the one time. Going forward, all of your subsequent batches will simply be cultured with a little bit of your previous batch. The only thing that you do need to add is the 2 tablespoons of some type of prebiotic, some type of inulin, and of course, again, another quart of your half and half. This is an 8-quart Instant Pot Pro. And I'm going to go ahead and hit yogurt. And you'll see mine is already set for 36 hours. But if yours is not set for 36 hours, it's very easy to simply use the dial to get the time that you want. Once you get the time set, you simply press your button. And now you'll see, again, this is also set for 100 degrees Fahrenheit. You can see I've been making a lot of this. So once you get the time set and the temperature, it'll come back to the time, and then you're all set to go ahead and press the start button. And now it's going to work on warming up, hitting 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and culturing our El Ruderai Super Yogurt. And so I will see you back here in 36 hours. Well, it's been 36 hours. My Instant Pot beeped and it says end. So we know the culturing process has been completed. One thing I want to share with you that I forgot to mention earlier was that since we're using the yogurt feature on the Instant Pot, you just leave the little button pushed to vent. You don't have to worry about closing it because we're not doing any pressure cooking. So now we'll go ahead and open this, and I'll show you exactly what the first batch looks like. Now, as I shared with you earlier in this video, you are going to see some curdling. Basically, the half and half has developed into what looks more like curds and whey. That's totally normal, and it's exactly what is to be expected with the first batch. When you remove the lid, the aroma will be somewhat similar to yogurt. It's very pleasant. Now, when you remove the lid and look down into your jar, it will look very thick and nice on top, like a lovely yogurt. But you will see that as you go down into the yogurt, into our super yogurt, our cultured dairy, you will see the curdling, and then often the whey has pooled more or less down on the bottom. With this first batch, you have a couple of options. Some folks like to just try and scoop off as much yogurt as they can, or super yogurt as they can, and try to leave as much whey down at the bottom of the jar and then use that for something else. Some people will just go ahead and dump the whole thing into a lined mesh strainer and strain off the whey that way and have a more solid end product. What I like to do is basically just take a whisk and whisk it all together. It does make the end product slightly less thick because you're whisking the whey back in, the liquid. But this is such a thick super yogurt, I don't find whisking that whey into it to really make a significant difference. It's nothing like regular yogurt. And it's still considerably thicker than Greek yogurt. But what I want to do with this first batch, we're going to make the second batch, and then I'll be with you again in 36 hours. But what I want to do with this first batch is show you what this yogurt that has formed, the super yogurt has formed on top, looks like. Now you'll see as I go down and put the spoon into the top of this yogurt, as I'm breaking it, or breaking into it, so to speak, with the spoon, you can observe how thick it is. And now, as I scoop some out on the spoon, you can really observe what the texture of this first batch is like. It's very thick, very creamy, and it's got a wonderful aroma. It's exactly like if you had taken either regular yogurt or even Greek yogurt, because if you buy Greek yogurt at the grocery store, you may notice that it's not really thick the way this is. It's thicker than regular yogurt, but not as thick as this. So this, to me, resembles something where you have either strained regular yogurt for maybe a good 24 hours or Greek yogurt for about 12 hours. It's a wonderful thick consistency. So as I said, some people will just try to scoop off as much of this yogurt as possible, leaving this whey down at the bottom of the jar. Now there are a few little bits of curds in the whey, and they may scoop those out and then mix this all together and refrigerate it. When you refrigerate it, it becomes even thicker as it cools down, because this is warm right now. And so that's definitely something that you can do. However, as I said, what I find easiest to do and really creates a wonderful product, look at this, see how thick this is? Look at this, it's amazing. So by just mixing this up with your whisk, you still have a wonderful thick product. And I like to include the whey. This is a good way, a good way for me to consume the whey by keeping it in the yogurt. If you decide to scoop out your super yogurt and then you have the whey, don't throw the whey out. That's cultured whey, and you can either drink it, in the summer. It can be nice over ice. Other ways to use it is when you're baking. It helps create very tender baked goods. Another option is using it in ferments. If you like to use whey to help jumpstart or kickstart your various fermentation projects, that's always an option. So there's a lot of different things that you can do with your whey. Don't throw it out. So it is a more liquidy product. However, what I know from experience is that once I refrigerate this, it's going to be very firm. So this for me works out very well. Also, I like to make sure that I mix the curds and the whey together, especially in the first batch. You could always strain out the curds and put the whey to the side, so to speak, with your second jar. But for this first batch, I like to mix the curds and the whey back together, because we've got to use some of this to culture our next batch, our second batch, which will culture a little different than this. It's not going to be so curdled into curds and whey. And so I like to have at least one batch. We're just going to use 2 tablespoons of this to culture our next batch. We don't use the tablets anymore. But I like to make sure that I have a really good product that I'm using to culture my second batch, so that I've incorporated both the yogurt and the whey. It's all very rich in good bacteria in the L-reuteri, but it's just a little habit or quirk, you could say, of mine, that I feel a certain level of comfort by mixing it together and having both the curds and the whey to use as my culture for my second batch. Now, you may be noticing by looking at the spoon, you might be saying, oh my gosh, this kind of resembles kefir or kefir, depending on how you say it. And to a certain extent, this first batch does. It will be a little grainy, almost like a little chunky if you stir the whey and the curds back together, but it's still very tasty. And secondly, if you are of the school of thought that you are more comfortable leaving some of the whey behind and just pulling out the, for lack of a better word, chunks, the chunks of the cultured dairy, you will even find that they are slightly, not grainy per se, but they do have a little bit of a more chunky consistency, so to speak, on your tongue. But it's completely normal. Don't worry about it. This is how the first batch comes. It's completely edible. It's very good for you. And there's nothing to be concerned about in terms of the texture. And the texture is going to become different as you go on to make your second batch, your third batch, and so on and so forth. And speaking of your third batch, you won't be using this first batch that we made to culture your third batch. You're going to use some of your second batch to culture your third batch, and some of your third batch to culture your fourth batch. This way, the L. reuteri, good bacteria, is always very vibrant, very prolific, very alive to culture each new batch of super yogurt. Because the general rule when it comes to L. reuteri, cultured dairy, or super yogurt is that this stays fresh and potent for approximately 10 days in your refrigerator. That's when the L. reuteri is really at its peak. So you want to consume it within 10 days and then reserve some to get ready to make your second batch, also within that 10-day time frame. Now I just want to take a taste of this so I can tell you exactly what it's like. As I said, the aroma is lovely. That is lovely. And I think you're going to really like this, especially if you have found a traditional plain yogurt or traditional plain Greek yogurt slightly tangy. Maybe it's almost too tangy for you. I think you're going to find that L. reuteri cultured dairy has a really lovely, pleasant flavor. And the only difference you're going to find when it comes to your first batch, in terms of comparing it to traditional yogurt or Greek yogurt, is that it does have some texture to it. Now I'll show you how to make the second batch. Now for your second batch, you will need some type of prebiotic. So again, I'm just going to go ahead and use the chicory inulin that I've got here, and we're going to use the same amount, 2 tablespoons. Now we're going to go ahead and take some of our first batch, and all we need is 2 tablespoons. And I'm going to go ahead and just put that right on top of the inulin. Now we've got our cultured dairy in there, our super yogurt, so we don't need the little tablets. I just want to confirm that so that you know you do not need to have the crushed L. reuteri tablets in your mixing bowl. All you're going to want to have is your 2 tablespoons of inulin and your 2 tablespoons from batch 1 of your super cultured dairy. From here, we're going to take a similar step. We're just going to pour in a little bit of our half and half, and we're going to whisk this together to make a nice slurry. And this helps really distribute the inulin throughout the half and half. Now to get that inulin to completely dissolve, it will take anywhere of whisking it from like 30 seconds to maybe a minute. And then, as you'll see, I'll show you some close-ups. It's going to be quite lovely, very well mixed, and you won't see any more little globules of inulin. It'll all be mixed in beautifully. So once everything is mixed in, and I'll tilt this measuring cup and give you a close-up so you can see how nice and creamy this looks and how well mixed it is, and that there are no more inulin globules. And the next thing that we're going to do is simply go ahead and add in the rest of our half and half. Once you pour in all of your half and half, then all you need to do is use your whisk and whisk everything together so that you mix it, you mix the mixture, the little slurry that you made, you mix that well in with the rest of the half and half so that we're distributing the L. reuteri culture very well through this second batch. Well, I've got this well mixed. Now I'm just going to go ahead and pop these into the refrigerator and get more clean jars. And the reason I want to pop these into the refrigerator is once they cool down, I want to show you how this thickens after I've mixed in the whey. And then I'll also show you how much even thicker the cultured dairy in this one becomes that's on top and that's sitting on top of the whey. Alrighty, well let me put these in the fridge. I'll get some clean jars and then we'll proceed. Well, I've got my second set of jars here, quart-sized jars. And I just wanted to mention, I may have already shared this with you in the beginning of this video, but any quart-sized jar will do. What I've got here are canning jars. You can also use the Weck jars that have the glass lids. You're just not going to use the rubber seal or the little metal clips. Also, these don't need to be sterilized. If you want to run them through your dishwasher, you certainly can, but as long as they've been washed with hot soapy water, rinsed well, and allowed to air dry, they're fine. And again, all I'm going to do is just divide our mixture, our half and half El Ruderai mixture here, between the two jars. I try to get it as even as I can. It's not an exact science though. And then once we get all of this into our jars, then we'll go ahead and do as we just did with the first batch. We're going to leave the lids on loosely. Remember, you don't want them tight. And if you're using the Weck jars, you can just put those little glass lids on top. No band, no metal clips, nothing like that. And I'll just go ahead and rest the lid on top of this one. And I don't screw them on at all. I want this to be able to breathe. Then we're going to go ahead, carefully pick these up and lower them back down into the liner of the Instant Pot. Once we've got our jars into the liner of the Instant Pot, we're going to go ahead and put the lid on. As I mentioned earlier, you're just going to have it set to vent. We're not doing any pressure cooking, so we don't need to worry about sealing it. Now we're just going to lock our lid in place. And then we're going to choose, just as we did with the first batch of the El Ruderai Super Yogurt that we made, we're going to choose yogurt, the yogurt option. It should already be set for you as it is set for me. At 36 hours, I'm going to press my knob, and then it's going to say 100 degrees Fahrenheit. That is the correct temperature that we want. I'm going to go ahead and press the knob again. It's going to come back to 36 hours. Press the knob. Yes, that's what I want. And then, let me see, here we go, start. And we're just going to go ahead and press the start button. And now I'll come back to you in 36 hours and I'll share with you the second batch. Well, another 36 hours have passed and we've got our second batch of El Ruderai Super Cultured Dairy ready to take a look at. So let's see how this came. Oh, it looks wonderful. I think you're going to be very pleased. And I saved the first batch, or at least one of them, because we did mix one up, so that we could do a comparison. But these look great. I'm going to definitely share some close-ups, but I just want to mention that if you see condensation in your jars, do not worry about that at all. That's completely normal. It just happens during the culturing process at the 100 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you see a little bit of, there's not too much on top of either of these, but if you do see a little bit of liquid on top, that's also caused by condensation. Nothing to worry about. It's completely normal. Now I tried moving this around and tilting it a little so that you could see the little bit of liquid on top, that little bit of condensation. But as I said, that's nothing to be concerned about. It's completely normal, and you can either pour it off if you want, or when you go to refrigerate this and you just want to mix it in a little, that's fine too. Now what I want to do is go and get our first batch out so that you can see the comparison between the first batch that separates into curds and whey and this second batch that looks a lot more like proper yogurt consistency. Now these are both from the first batch where we used the crushed El Ruderai tablets. This was the one that we mixed up and then went ahead and put this in the refrigerator, and I'll show you the consistency of that. And this is the one that I wanted to leave in its curds and whey format and go ahead and refrigerate to save for a 36-hour period later so that you could compare and contrast what a first batch will look like as opposed to what a second batch will look like. As you look at the jars side by side, you can easily see the curds and whey in the first batch, and you can see how the second batch came looking very nice, very creamy. Now the first thing I want to do is show you, this is the one that used to look like this. This is from the very first batch, but we stirred the curds and whey back together, and then we refrigerated it. So I want to show you how the texture looks. And I mean, it's just lovely. And you can compare that. See, look at that. Now it is a little grainy because we were, it did curdle into the curds and whey and we mixed it together. But as you'll see, it's got a fantastic consistency. You can certainly eat this as is, but if you want to give it a smoother texture, you can go ahead and add this into any kind of smoothie as your base for whatever dairy you may want to add to a smoothie, and the blender action will smooth this out 1, 2, 3. Now let's look at this second batch, the batch that we made with just using some of our first batch and not using any of the L-Reuteri tablets. And what I do want to mention is whatever batch you are in terms of your journey on making L-Reuteri, whether in the yogurt maker or in the Instant Pot, L-Reuteri supercultured dairy is at its peak, at its most effective, at its most richest in the good bacteria of the L-Reuteri. Its strongest is within the first 10 days. So that's what the shelf life, the refrigerated shelf life of this is. It's basically 10 days. So you would want to consume this within 10 days to get the maximum benefit of the L-Reuteri. Now let's take a look at this. Now this is going to become even firmer once you get this into your refrigerator. But I think that you are just going to flip at how amazing this second batch comes. Look at this. You're absolutely going to love the texture of your second batch, as well as your third batch and beyond. It's just a matter of getting through your first batch. And as I showed you, if you just go ahead and mix up your curds and whey, you've still got some pretty nice, pretty thick supercultured dairy on your first try. But the second batch and beyond is going to come out like this. It's amazing texture, wonderful aroma, great taste, very smooth, very thick. You're really going to be pleased with this. Now I know, even though I've tried to be very thorough in this video, you may have a lot of questions about making L-Reuteri, super yogurt, or supercultured dairy, and I certainly understand that. And be sure to leave your questions in the comments below, because I'm going to be doing a follow-up video where I do an L-Reuteri Q&A. And I'm going to answer questions about what is involved when making L-Reuteri in the yogurt maker, as well as what's involved when making L-Reuteri in the Instant Pot. Plus, because I did already receive a lot of questions on the yogurt maker version, a number of you had asked me to make this with coconut milk and show what's involved that's slightly different, and I'll also be doing that as well. So if that's something that you're interested in learning about and you've not subscribed to my channel yet, be sure to do that and click on the notification bell so you'll know when those videos come out. Well, in the interim, I hope that you will experiment with this and enjoy this. And if you want to learn how to make all types of cultured dairy, as well as other fermented foods, be sure to click on this video where I have a whole playlist with that and more. And I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country kitchen. Love and God bless.